Workplace health and safety is everybody's business, and we all have a role to play in keeping our workplaces healthy and safe. A key principle of the Work Health and Safety Act is the management of risks. A person conducting a business or undertaking, known as a PCBU, must do what is reasonably practicable to ensure health and safety in the workplace. As such, there is a duty to eliminate health and safety risks so far as is reasonably practicable. If they can't do that, then they need to minimise the risks so far as is reasonably practicable. The standard of reasonably practicable in health and safety duties only applies to a PCBU. So what does this mean for PCBUs? What is reasonably practicable is an objective test, meaning that the duty holder must meet the standard of behaviour expected of a reasonable person in the duty holder's position, and who is required to comply with the same duty. If something did go wrong in the workplace, then questions might be asked about: what would a person be reasonably expected to know in the circumstances, and what would be reasonably foreseeable in the circumstances? Let's explore this concept further. There are two elements to what is reasonably practicable. First, after assessing the risks, a duty holder must consider what is possible in the circumstances to ensure health and safety. Then, they must consider whether it would be reasonable in the circumstances to do everything that is possible. When determining if something is reasonably practicable to ensure health and safety, you need to take into account and weigh up all relevant matters, including the likelihood of a hazard or risk occurring, the degree of harm that might result if the hazard or risk occurred, what the person concerned knows or ought to reasonably know about the hazard or risk and ways of eliminating it or minimizing it, the availability and suitability of ways to eliminate or minimize the risk, the cost of eliminating or minimizing the risk, and the way in which workers interact with equipment and processes to ensure that tasks are performed as designed. Costs may only be considered after assessing the extent of the hazard or risk and the available ways of eliminating or minimizing the risk. The costs of implementing a particular control may include the cost of purchase, installation, maintenance, and operation of the control measure, and any impact on productivity as a result of the introduction of the control measure. A calculation of the costs of implementing a control measure should also take into account any savings made from fewer incidents, injuries, and illnesses, and potentially improved productivity and staff turnover. Cost will not ordinarily be the key factor in determining what is reasonably practicable, unless it can be shown that the cost of eliminating the risk is grossly disproportionate to the risk. If the degree of harm is severe, in other words, if the risk could result in serious injury or death, it is unlikely that the cost of implementing available and suitable measures would outweigh the benefits of doing so. In some circumstances, it may be more reasonable to eliminate the risk by ceasing the work altogether. Remember that for something to be considered reasonably practicable, first you will need to determine what can be done to eliminate or minimize the risk, and then consider what is reasonable by first assessing the likelihood of the hazard or risk, the degree of harm that the hazard or risk may cause, what is known or ought to be known about the hazard or risk and the ways of eliminating or minimizing the risk, the availability and suitability of ways to eliminate or minimize the risk, and finally, the cost of doing so. Although cost is a relevant factor, there is a clear presumption in favour of safety ahead of cost, and cost is only considered after all other factors. If the risk of harm to health is that there could be a serious injury or death, cost is unlikely to be taken into account when determining if something is reasonably practicable. Visit the WHS website at www.dmers.wa.gov.au/WHS. Workplace health and safety is everybody's business, and we all have a role to play in keeping our workplaces healthy and safe.